Welcome back. You are watching BSG Plus 2025. How we doing, BSG?
There we go.
My name is Tiny Tim 78, and I'm going to be here for a little interview here with the absolutely fantastic Nashlax, who later on is going to be running the Final Fantasy III run for us. Nash, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I had coffee. I'm comfy. BSG is in a very, very good location. I love it. I love it here.
Yes, we're in our new location here. It's absolutely fantastic. Before we start, I'm just going to throw out a massive shout out to the last run.
Yes.
Wasn't that fantastic?
That
what
race
an
was so
amazing
close.
race. We were sitting up the back watching it, and it was absolutely fantastic. So really, really shout outs to the runners. What a fantastic start for BSG Plus. Anyway, Nash, you're going to be running Final Fantasy III for us.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your history of speedrunning at BSG.
Oh, speedrunning at BSG. I think I'm moving up the ladder with it. So I did Final Fantasy 1, then I've done Final Fantasy 2, and I'm on the trifecta now.
We're now
I'm
on
bringing
the three. Excellent.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I wonder what they'll bring next to BSG.
I wonder. Who knows? So yes, Final Fantasy III then. Why that game specifically? Because I always see Final Fantasy III a little bit as the black sheep of the 8-bit sort of trilogy. And it's a very interesting game. It is, if I'm correct in saying, the last game of the three that got a Western release when the DS version came out. Am I right in that?
So the DS version actually is very interesting because that was released in 3D.
Yes, it was. It wasn't the actual 2D version.
Yeah.
Was it the Pixel Remaster was the first time?
Yeah, so Pixel Remaster is the first time Final Fantasy III actually got back into the Western Hemisphere, and we saw it release on Pixel format.
Yeah.
Before that, it was back on, like, the 3D version on the DS was the only one that was really playable.
Yes, yeah, that's interesting. So tell us a little bit about the game and a little bit about the run then, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so like you said, like it's considered a little bit of the black sheep as the NES game. For me, it's somewhat of a very endearing game where they really try to bring it back to like a very light-hearted but very heavy story-focused, almost adventure to play through. You're playing the 4 Onion Kids in this one. It's also the introduction of some very classic systems that you might know about. Talk about class changing. That's a thing that FF3 brought to the table. Like FF1, you saw yourself picking classes. FF2 had a bunch of classes hidden in characters. The Onion Kids can do them all. And it's the first time you could actually start tinkering with those. And we see that coming back later in games like 5, 7, all the way up in 10, being able to do a sphere grid. FF3 really brought some unique mechanics to the table. And I really love it for it because there's so many things that fall into place because you know Final Fantasy 3.
Yes, very much the genesis of the sort of job system that goes on to develop throughout the series. You do mention your Onion Kids, your Onion Knights there. Just to point out that we do have a couple of bid wars for this run.
Yeah.
We do have the naming incentives for the 4 Onion Knights, so please get your donations in. The top 4 will be accepted, and that will be one of the heroes of our story. And this is the one I wanted to talk to you about. We have the rolling music bid war.
Yeah.
You can choose to have the original 8-bit NES chip tunes or the Pixel Remastered.
That's really good. Like,
which is the one that Nash prefers. So you know what to do.
There's a different side here. Like, if you want, like, because Tim is gonna be there for most of the way during FF3 as well. So if you wanna bring that NES glory, like, yeah, you can donate towards that. But if you want some Pixel Remaster stuff, the remakes are really good.
I think it is a rolling bid war, so it can change throughout. And as I say, I do have the absolute pleasure of hosting this run later on. So I'm looking forward to hearing your donations, reading your donations, getting that music changed.
Yes,
absolutely fantastic. So just to move on a little bit here, I also will point out the shirt.
Yeah, it's just a classic.
It is a classic, isn't it? Absolutely amazing, and a very iconic image. When you think of Final Fantasy, you think of the Black Mage.
Casting fire.
Absolutely fantastic.
It's happening in this run. I can finally cast fire with a Black Mage
You
again.
will be casting fire.
I made it happen.
But let's sort of segue then into your history with the series in general. We were talking, as I say, during the Super Mario run. We were just sitting there talking the whole time. It was brilliant. And Nash said to me, "Oh, we could have just been doing the interview."
This would have been the entire run, an interview. Like
it was, but no, we were talking about history and your sort of connection with Final Fantasy. What was your first Final Fantasy game?
It was actually Final Fantasy 1. Don't tell anyone over on the Japanese side, but I played Final Fantasy 1 on an English patch somewhere back in the early 90s on a PC from my grandparents back in the day. It was a very unique game to play through back then, and ever since then, I've actually just been stuck with them. Like, I've played most of them as they basically were available to me. And back when 6 was something that I just finished, like the PS1 came out here in Europe with Final Fantasy 7. And at that point I was already hooked. So like I knew what I was getting into. It was such a massive franchise for me.
That's very interesting because again, we discussed this. The Final Fantasy 7 was the first international European release. There was an American release of Final Fantasy 1 and then Final Fantasy 4, 2.
Yeah, 2, yeah. Yes. And 3, 6.
Yes, 6, yeah. So
For those American watching.
So there was 3 American releases, but there was the first time that Europeans got access to Final Fantasy officially.
To a mainline Final Fantasy. There is Final Fantasy Legends, which is a whole different beast to tackle. But we got 3 hours of FF3 ahead of us. We got plenty of time.
We can maybe mention it. But no, Final Fantasy 7 is very interesting. That's how I got my sort of introduction to Final Fantasy was obviously through Final Fantasy 7. But I do appreciate your enthusiasm and depth of knowledge of the series.
It's an amazing series to just go through and just learn and be able to grow and learn more as the franchise as time goes on as well. There's so much to tell.
I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you the dreaded question.
Oh no!
What is your favourite Final Fantasy game to speed run?
To speed run. Oh, that's
we'll get
rough.
Specific here.
So. Honestly, if I want to sit down and speedrun a Final Fantasy game, it'll probably be Final Fantasy 1. If it's a run where I have the most laughs and fun with, some people will know me as someone who played Final Fantasy 14 as a speedrun. That's a 15-hour gauntlet. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. And if you're in for it and you sit down and you just enjoy the ride, whichever way it takes you, it's an amazing speedrun to just play and watch as well. But it is a humongous beast. That's also what's what's so fun for the Final Fantasy speedruns. You can speedrun a Final Fantasy game in an hour. You can also spend an entire day. You can also spend an entire week speedrunning Final Fantasy.
Again, we've mentioned that there's so many different games, so many different versions, so many different categories within each game. And the series just has endless potential, really. Without probably, I think we're both very, very big Final Fantasy nerds up here. And I hope Final Fantasy's also got a good history at BSG. We've had lots of. I want to shout out the amazing Boxmeister's Final Fantasy 5 run from 2019.
Man, that was a fun watch.
That I remember hosting for. So so we'll probably just start wrapping things up. But is there anything specific about this run that you really enjoy? Anything you think that's going to be a highlight?
So for most of the classic Final Fantasy speedruns, you have a strategy and you stick to it. What is really nice about this one to me is that the way I have to play through the game changes as time goes along. The first hour, you see me already doing different things, and I just have to adapt to what is ahead of me ahead of time. If something goes wrong, and it probably will, knowing me, I have to adapt on the spot as well and figure out how to actually hit the estimate. And we'll get there, but it's always a good time.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you, Nashlax, for joining me. BSG, you know what to do. Let's get ready for the next one. And then later on, we will be back with the fantastic Final Fantasy 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Keep
so much,
enjoying
everyone.
the event. Keep donating. Cheers.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, everyone. See you later.